The Morning Edge is our morning show on Best of U.S. Investors, 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern. On this episode, this outtake, Mr. Ruben gives us an update on Nvidia's Rubin chip, or as he clarifies, it's not really a chip, and gets into some details. Now, this is a great time to have a discussion about what Nvidia is doing. He brings an enormous amount of knowledge to the table, and that's what the Morning Edge is all about. So let's check out what Mr. Ruben has to say about the Rubin chip.
Dennis has some interesting things on NVIDIA he wanted to bring up, and he does have a talking paper that I can't pull up, but he'll submit it to you, Trent, and you can post it for him. But he wants to do a little, he wants to talk to what he's seen on NVIDIA, which he follows it way closer than a lot of us do. So, Dennis, you want to go ahead?
Good morning, everyone.
Hi, Dennis.
Good morning.
I just thought that with earnings coming up on the 25th after the closing bell, some people might want to see why I'm so high and why I'm always talking about this. So I'm going to see if I can pull this up. There's the document, but I got to go in and hit the share.
I think you can, there you go. Okay.
Can you see it?
Not yet. Just hold on. It'll come up. There you go. Yep, it's up there.
Okay. Some of these are very highly technical and won't mean much to any of us, but I just want to look at some salient points. The Vera Rubin chip is upcoming. It's kind of past beta test right now. It's doing very well. It consists of, some people call it the Vera Rubin chip. It's a chip, but it's a whole set. There's 72 GPUs and 36 CPUs in one Vera Rubin chip. They all revolve around CUDA, and the only weakness or mediocre part of that system had been inference. And as many of you know, they just spent $20 billion. Nvidia now has absorbed, for all practical purposes, Grok. So they're the king of everything, and owns both sides of the inference split. And then I'm trying to put this a little in perspective. And again, I want to go through this quickly, but they own 80 to 90% of the global market. The large language models all run on NVIDIA, virtually all of them. And then Rubin's a 6 chip, and we talked about the rack scale and the 7236. It's fully programmed. This is one that people miss all the time, and I'm going to try to explain this. If you buy an ASIC, which is Google's chip and Avgo or Broadcom's, whatever they prefer to be called, those are application specific. They can't be changed. It's like the etching in the World Cup or the etching in the Atlanta Masters, because they're made to do only one particular project, and it can't be changed. Well, changes need to be made depending on who you want to talk to, every 4 to 8 months. That means you got to take out the old, you got to program exactly one configuration, you got to labor, put it back in. Whereas all the NVIDIA chips are programmable. They can be done on the fly. You go in, go bloop, 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 and they say, okay, go left here, go right there, go straight, and then go south. And it's, seconds. The inference cost versus, I don't like the way this is worded, but it's 1/10 of what the Blackwell chip is, which is running right now. You can look at the MOE models, which I will refer to in a little bit. The fastest architecture, very, very scarce. Very few people can actually program what's called CUDA, which is the architectural system. About 70 to 80% of those are NVIDIA engineers. There are some that are external, but not very many. There's full scraps. There's where's CoreWeave? Okay, CoreWeave is another one that NVIDIA actually invests in. That's going into mission control in the space and everything else. Where's the super factories here? Microsoft's factories will deploy Rubin at massive scale. Well, Rubin isn't fully here yet. The platform strategies I want to talk about. Okay. The NUMA is a very important one. Non-uniform memory access, which to us, if you think of the New York Stock Exchange, people always want to move their office, 50 feet closer or half of the distance, and that's to get faster throughput and nanoseconds, et cetera, et cetera. Well, in fact, Nvidia does that with local memory, and it'll say that everything remote on another CPU is slower. So again, it's the, as far as I know, the only people really using the NUMA technology. Then we're coming to some of the big ones. The bottom decile, that means the lowest 10% in its history in valuation. If you think of their real history, we'll even use 2000, they were around just before then. The bottom 10% in valuation right now, that's how cheap it is. Who are some of the beneficiaries? Avgo, again, a competitor, but also a beneficiary. Foxconn, CoreWeave, SMCI, and Taiwan Semi. Now, one of the things that's not shown on this chart is what's called SK Hynix. Now, there are only 3 high bandwidth memory companies in the world to matter: Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron, which is US based. SK Hynix is probably the fastest, but it's the one that always prioritizes the Nvidia request. And they're both Korean. Now, I also went into AI and said, hey, if you wanted to just give us fair value, it's trading right now at about 24 times forward earnings, and the PEG ratio, that's price to earnings to growth. So most of you are familiar with the price to earnings ratio, is in the 24 range. But the price to earnings to growth, depending on which growth you want to use, I use 62%. That's what it was last quarter. You're talking anywhere from 0.4 to 0.57, 0.61. Cheap is 0.8. They're so cheap that there's nobody that can even model it. These are the things that happen to growth companies when they come right out of the chute. The snowflakes that started out, those kind of companies. But of course, it's a fairly mature company. So this thing said, here's your fair value, $1,100 a share. And I'm just using kind of a midpoint. And this is the physics aligned zone, not fantasy. And this isn't just my number. This is AI. I don't remember which engine because I use several of them. But my numbers, not that my numbers are pretty irrelevant, but mine are 325, 477, 611, all the way up to 1,000 in 2030, and then a 10-to-1 split, which is about where they've been splitting historically. This thing, of course, assuming no split, he's saying right now it should be 1,100, 1,200. So what I wanted everybody to see is you can go through the data and you can go through some specifics. I'm giving you highlights, but I keep adding. It's way too big in our portfolio, but I just can't ignore the mathematics and the physics. To me, that's up to everybody else, but I hope that helps. At least you know why I've been so high on it. Doesn't mean you agree, doesn't mean you have to own any, but if you own almost any index fund, it has Nvidia in it. Okay, Mark, I hope that went
Yeah, Dennis, I really appreciate you put a lot of work into that. And you've been talking to me for about a week about getting this up, and we kind of got off track this week, but I'm glad you. Does anyone have a question for Dennis? Anything?
I actually do. You mentioned NUMA.
yes.
Is that? Can you? So can you explain that, or
Okay,
can you put
NUMA
it in
means,
terms maybe somebody who doesn't understand
I'm going to try.
means. Okay.
NUMA means non-uniform memory, non-uniform memory access, technically. What happens is it has local memory and it allows faster and faster access by compressing the distance. Does that make sense?
So if I have my computer here and
Yeah.
I have a Nvidia GPU
Hmm.
and I have a CPU,
Hmm.
and you say it compresses the distance.
Within the architecture now, within the CUDA architecture. So you're talking the distance from, I mean, the width of your fingernail to a third of your fingernail or something. I mean, we're
Okay.
talking just tiny, 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 tiny differences, Trent, but it's a big contributor. Like, let me go back a second. High bandwidth memory, like the SK Hynix, is the
Hmm.
gate. You can have the greatest architecture and everything else, but that's your what's that thing that I'm trying to think of that limits how fast you can go? That's what it.
Oh, theory of constraints,
Well, it is a constraint, yeah. But what's the thing that they governor? I guess is what.
governor. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like putting a governor on. So SK Hynix is in an enormous demand. Also Samsung, also Micron, but these fellas use about 90% of SK Hynix because they want the fastest of the fastest. So that's one gate. The other one is the distance that the current has to travel, which is, I mean, we can't even conceptualize it. If you think of a ruler, um, you'd rather go 6 inches than 12. You'd rather go 3 inches than six. You'd rather go a quarter inch than three. Is it making sense? It's just
Yeah.
compressing the distance. And by doing that, it allows faster access from point A to point B, and it's using less electricity.
Right.
So, and we're talking, thousands and thousands of watts. So I don't even know. I'm not,
So let me ask you this: when we're in relation to what you're explaining here,
okay.
for the average person, so for me on my computer, is that as relevant
No,
versus a data center or a um, complex problem solving?
no. I mean,
Okay.
for you, instead of you push enter and it takes, I don't know, half a second, let's say, to get a response. If it goes from a half second to a quarter second, do you notice? Probably not even notice.
No.
But in a data center where you're processing millions of tokens a second, it does make a difference, yes. But to the average person using a computer, I don't think you even know. In fact, I don't know that NUMA would even be reasonable to put in a PC because, when we push the thing, if we have to wait a quarter of a second or half second, we don't pay attention. But
Right.
when you're going through each rack, and it depends on the configuration, but you got to figure $250,000 per rack to do, and then all of that is tied in to NVIDIA's captive CUDA system. And it's it's almost like if you wanted it, let's say that you decided a Chevy engine was better than a Ford engine, you wanted to change it out, you got to change everything to make it work.
Right.
So people that are tied into CUDA, I can't say it's captive, that's not totally true, but it's captive for us, our conception, it's basically 100% CUDA. You don't mix CUDA with other things. You can do it in stereo equipment. You can do it in certain types of camera equipment. You can't do it with CUDA. So if you're going to change out, you're talking millions and millions of dollars to change out a system. And so
Hi, can I jump in here?
you may.
Go ahead,
Um,
Larry.
yeah, about a week ago, I tried to bring up this issue with this local memory and the CPU, which is, I think, he's hitting on. And I mentioned that AMD does not have that capability, and it would take them years to be able to have that capability. It's very important that a CPU have local memory because the access time it will because if a CPU has to go outside of local memory, it loses a lot of cycles, processing cycles, waiting for that memory to be reloaded. And that's the key. Where when it's local, it will not miss any processing any processing cycle just to get some data into memory or out of memory. And then there's another process that may take that local memory and store it somewhere or retrieve it, but it will not slow down the processor. At least that's my 2 cents. Over.
Linda, I agree with everything you're saying. We're kind of saying the same thing. Um, it seems infinitesimally small to us, but when you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of racks, even thousands of racks, you're talking about the G forces that they need to generate. I mean, gigawatts are, that's the next area I need to look at, Mark, is where are we in gigawatts and storage? I think one of the biggest gates for NVIDIA, personally, I think it's the local communities accepting a new data center. We've got one, I live in Charlotte, and we've got one in the region that wants to be, a data center site. And there's all kinds of concerns, water usage, electricity, any minerals, all that stuff. And that's, to me, that's a bigger gate than anything else. But at some point in my tiny little cranium here, I'm more of a math guy, and the math tells me this has to be one of the most underpriced stocks in the history of the stock market since I've been watching. But it
Hey,
isn't coming.
hey,
It isn't coming out.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Fred. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm going to
It
ask you a
isn't
question, but
coming out
please finish.
publicly because, in my opinion, they can't model algorithmically, spreadsheet wise, the way this continues to, everybody thinks it's going to be, let's go to the edge of the world and it's going to fall off. I think that'll happen perhaps in 2037, but we're talking years, we're talking a decade, in my opinion. Trent,
Okay.
go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. I hope I
No,
didn't.
no. I'm sorry I interrupted. When you so let's like direct this like to the financial industry. I've talked about high frequency trading. Um, Great book by Michael Lewis on the high frequency trading industry and the billions of dollars that have been put in to get a straight pipeline to the exchanges so they can have faster speeds. What I'm not hearing much of, and maybe you are, is the financial industry being a purchaser of these products because of the demand for high frequency trading, the speed element. And what you're talking about with this NUMA is like shrinking the gap in a sense. Are you hearing anything about, we hear about the data centers, but we're not hearing about like particular sectors like the financial industry or I don't know.
Here's what here's what I think is going on, Trent. Just my opinion. It's hard to get data on that. It's a good point. I think what's going on is there are financial, and I'm specifically thinking of Morgan Stanley, J.P. Morgan, Bank of New York, BK, and Goldman Sachs. I think they're tiptoeing, but not by buying equipment, but by renting AWS or space with Google or space with one of the hyperscalers as a test. I don't think anybody's really gone in. It's a tiptoe from what I've been able to ascertain, and it may not be accurate, but that's what it looks like to me. They're tiptoeing in to see, what am I gaining? Can I gain speed? Can I gain efficiency? Now, what's happened real recently is the legal profession. We were talking about categories. The legal profession is chopping paralegals and attorneys and people that they've hired right after they passed the bar, the new attorneys, and they're chopping them left and right because AI is doing 80% of what they did. So let's say a firm had 25 paralegals, they might be getting by with first about 15, 16, then down to, a core 7, so that they've got one paralegal for every, used to be 1 to 4, 1 to 7. Now I think it's something like 1 to 12 or 1 to 13.
That's
One
correct.
paralegal. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's correct. I read a story about a large firm laying off 1,000, 1,000 of their paralegals. I was shocked at that because they're moving to AI legal.
Yeah, it's very, very prevalent. I mean, it's kind of on the QT, Bob, but it's happening. You read, I've read, and I know people in that profession. I know it's going on. I think it's a big under the radar area. And why is that important, Trent? Because the legal industry and the financial industry kind of are tied at the hip. They
Yeah.
kind of work back hand in hand. I'm not talking about the retail guy, Joe Smith walks in and opens an account, not those guys. That may not even, that may completely go away in 5 years. But I'm talking about legal compliance and the whole ramification system of who can do what, when, and how quickly, insider trading, and all those issues.
I honestly look at the financial planning industry and say, if you got $1 million and you need some financial planning, like estate planning, protection planning, that kind of thing. And if you can go, instead of paying a say $3,000 to $10,000 fee, you can go onto AI and have it do it, and probably do it more accurately. Then it just comes down to implementation. And honestly, that is, I would think, be a big threat to the financial planning industry, because it just, if anything, it just cuts down on staffing, you know? Um, I guess here's the thing that shocks me most is the adoption rate this is moving at. You know, 6 months, a year ago, I was like, this is going to take time. This is going to take 36 to 72 months. And what I'm hearing, like Bob was saying about the law firm, like you're talking about with the technology of this is moving way faster, and it's disrupting many industries that aren't hitting the news feed yet. And my question is, how does that start to show up in some of the economic numbers, and how does the market interpret that? I mean, if you just laid off 1,000 paralegals, you're not the only one doing it.
You're
You
seeing
Less
know?
government
you're seeing
income.
the high tech companies lay off a bunch of people.
You're
Yeah.
starting to see it in many, many, many industries, Trent. Those that are very labor intensive, where they're relying on people to create documents, to replicate, to modify, which the legal professions, right at the top of that. Those people are getting eliminated. They keep a few around as overseers. Okay, let me look this document over, make sure it makes sense. But the creation is not only is there no labor, it's almost instantaneous. It takes longer to print than it does for the AI to create the will or the probate
Yeah.
possibilities or the heirs. You can, I know an attorney recently that created on their part 80, maybe 90% of what used to take, I don't know, 3 work days, we'll call it 20 hours, now takes an hour and an hour to review. It's not only the adoption, but the success they're having with the adoption. They just have to look carefully and make sure that what the output shows is legally compliant and agrees with their philosophy. But I agree with you, Trent. Let
So
me give you one.
Dennis,
Jensen Huang, who probably knows more about technology and AI than anybody in the world, or as much as anybody, he was talking about quantum computer coming in 7 to 10 years. And somebody called him out. He went back and investigated, and it's way, way, way faster than that. Quantum is going to be here in 2 to 3, I think, and he was thinking 8 to 10. And he's right on top of this stuff. So because he's got to integrate, I guess I can take that step further. He's got to integrate Nvidia and everything they do, that has to be seamless with quantum computing, so they work in tandem and not fight each other. That's a whole other, we haven't discussed that. But
Wow.
listen, fellas, I have to run. I've got a physician's appointment I need to go to, so I apologize.
Hey,
Everybody have a great holiday. Okay.
so when does the government pivot on how they're going to collect employee taxes?
wow. Wow.
They'll take it. They'll take it out of your universal income, Bob.
I mean,
They'll take it out of your universal income.
I guess I should take it down.
What's that?
I'm going to take this down because I got to run. I apologize.
All right, no
Okay,
I
problem.
I'll
think I
take it
got
down
it,
for you.
Trent. I can forward it to you, Trent.
Okay, cool.
So
All right.
I think they take it out of your universal income, Bob. That's what they do.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Maybe your retirement, they're gonna probably start pulling.
I haven't planned that they were going to have mine when I take it anyway.
But yeah, when does the government pivot to make up the loss of the income on the
I
taxes?
I don't think they think that fast.
Well,
You know,
obvious, but
yeah, I mean,
think
historically,
about it. It's
what,
got to happen. If all these people getting laid off,
yeah,
they're going to lose tax revenues.
yeah. I mean, you think about it, if you can take a law firm from, say, you got three lawyers, local law firm, three lawyers, you got, say, two paralegals per lawyer, so that's what, six, and then all of a sudden you can condense it down to one paralegal just to review the documents. You start to multiply that times every law firm. Here's the only thing that I see as the resistance level in all this is a lot of those guys don't have the know-how to adopt it. It's the bigger firms that are going to adopt it because they have the know-how, but it's the local guy who's like, wait a second, how do I do that? How do I create a
Right.
200-line prompt to do all my paralegal work? They don't. And I think that's a whole nother industry right there that
Right,
will
but
be
the big
created.
companies are going to be shedding people, for most part, and that, like I just said, 1,000 paralegals they're going to lay off. I
A
mean,
lot.
that's a huge number, right? How are they going to make up for that tax revenue? That's huge tax revenue,
Yeah.
and that's just one.
Right. My question is how many more are doing it that we don't know about? Or is that just a one-off kind of situation? I doubt it, but I think with these big firms,
We're just talking
no.
about firms. What about many other industries?
Oh
What
yeah.
about health? There's got to
What about
CPAs.
be
government? What about government?
banks, health, investment.
Government?
Won't they just
Yeah.
implement a fair tax?
What's fair, Steve?
Thank you very much. Is whatever they want and whatever they need.
Whatever they
That's,
want.
yeah, I have the same reaction when I'm in front of the set and I'm hearing somebody scream fair tax, and I scream right out to it, what is your version of fair? Because fair doesn't give me a number. I wish more folks would push back when they hear that spoken and say, give me a solid number. Because they're just not going to do that.
But
Yeah.
it's not fair as it stands right now.
Mm-mm.
No,
No.
the whole tax system's not fair.
Right.
I mean, if you
Right.
really boil down
Right.
to it, I would go to consumption tax in a heartbeat, and I'd pay, if it was 17%,
Yeah.
I
no
would
matter
have no
where I go,
problem with
whatever I have to
consumption
buy, if I
tax.
pay 17%, but I don't have a federal tax or there's not a corporate tax
Well,
or anything else, I'm good with that.
Well, and here, think about it. If you're buying a $53 million yacht, you're
Right,
not
bonds.
paying taxes on it.
Today.
Today, you're not paying
Yeah.
taxes on it.
Yeah, today
But if you
buy it in another country, yeah.
you have put a consumption tax on it and you eliminate the federal tax, you're going to get that money eventually, most likely get that money. Of course, you're going to have some loopholes and that kind of thing, but I think that gets more of what's being purchased on a wider spread of versus how we're doing it now.
Yeah, I guess my
Well,
thinking,
buy-
if you have a fair tax, if I'm buying from Bob doesn't have a corporate, and Bob's corporate tax is 0, then I'm the one paying the tax. Bob's not. But if Bob has to pay taxes, Bob's still passing that tax to me. I'm still paying it in the price of whatever I'm buying from him. So
complex.
you might as well zero it all out, and we might as well just pay for it as we go and as
So
we
s-
consume products.
So Steve, what you're telling us is it's all Bob's fault, really.
Thanks, thanks,
No,
Mark.
Bob,
Thanks, Mark.
Bob's fault. Well,
Throw
it might be
Bob
Bob's fault
under the bus.
because Bob's not screaming at people in Jersey about a zero corporate tax. That would be about it. But
Not New Jersey. They rake us over the coals in New Jersey.
well, there are other words for what they do, but I get it.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway.
All right.
Any